You are listening to New Theory Radio. Theory Radio.
Check 1 2 1 2 1 2. Hello, hello, hello. Welcome to another edition of New Theory Radio, here live at the CFRE studios, as well as iTunes, as well as Spotify. I'm your host, Nav Nanwa. This is the show where we theorize on all things current affairs, pop culture, and everyday life. And we have another exciting edition of New Theory Radio lined up with a great panel of guests that are going to help me sort of dissect, education from all different aspects of life, whether it be the role that institutions are playing, the role that governments are playing in regards to funding for education, as well as the role education plays in one's life. And I'm super excited to welcome both my guests. I'll start on my right. He is one of my homies from way back, I think McMaster days.
Yep.
He's always like my spirit animal when it comes to just what we go through in life, and always kind of connecting, for brews every now and then, just to shoot the shit and figure out what's going on and how we can help each other. And he's killing it right now at the Ryerson DMZ as the manager of partnerships.
That's correct.
And it's my boy Ali Taiyeb. What's up, man?
Thanks so much for having me, Nav. Super excited about the show.
Yeah,
and talking about education.
Plus, he can also slap a mean bass.
Right on.
We should bring in the bass next time.
Let's do it.
Bass for your face. And then on my left is my homie, another kindred spirit, I must say. Every time I see this man, we always get into deep conversations, and he's doing a lot. He's a photographer, he's an educator, he's a musician. Just recently launched his own website. He's doing like weekly music curation. Yep. It's my boy Strictly Steele. Shelique, what's going on, man?
Good, man. Thank you for having me.
Anytime, man.
We've been trying to get this done for a while, so I'm happy to be here, man.
Yo, we've been trying to get this done for a minute because Strick honestly has soccer games on Thursdays?
Every Thursday.
Priorities.
So sorry to the team, but homies take priority.
Yeah, they don't know that he's actually here doing the show, so they're probably losing right now because like Strick's their star player. But no, like I mentioned earlier, I'm super happy to have both of you on the show. A lot's been going on when you think about education here locally where we live, as well as in the mainstream, and then when it comes to just personal life. And because of both of your backgrounds, one of you working at an incubator that's funded by a university, and the other who's an educator in your daily life. I thought it'd be great to bring you both together and really talk about some pressing issues. And the first one I do want to talk about is really get your theories on what's going on here locally in Ontario when it comes to education. Province of Ontario plans to cut 3,475 full-time teaching positions over the next 4 years, resulting in a savings of $851 million. This definitely hits close to home, especially where we live here locally in Peel, as 369 Peel teachers actually learned this week that they will not have jobs this coming September. Understanding, Ali, that your mom is actually a teacher in Peel, and she has colleagues that are unfortunately going to be affected. And then Strick, you yourself have a lot of friends, within the teaching industry that are going to be impacted. I would love to get both of your theories on why, first and foremost, why you think education cuts take place. And secondly, why is it, and this is just my opinion, and I'd love to get both you guys to validate it, why is it that whenever the government's looking to save money, education's always the first thing to get impacted? And maybe Strick will begin with you.
Yeah, so for me, the idea of education is it's an investment for the future. So for me, seeing the cuts is a direct hit to what's going to be happening in the future. And before this, I was looking at what countries invest the most money in education. And of course, Norway came tough, for investing. But then it made me think of this whole word that you hear a lot when the conservatives are talking about, just Ontario and taxes, and they're talking about efficiencies. And there's different ways you can be efficient. So, for example, you can fund education, but it can be funded inefficiently. So in England, for example, where I'm originally from, they're putting a lot of money into education, but rather than putting it in the classrooms, they're funding it for teachers and teacher training, because there's a very, very, very high shortage of teachers there right now. So a lot of their money is going into teacher training, trying to bring more people into the profession. So they have this thing called Golden Handshake that was happening before. And it was basically an incentive for teachers to come into the field. So that would be still considered an investment into education, right? Even though it's hitting the classroom in a different way. But for us, it's hitting us in regards to the amount of teachers that we have, and also resources and things like that too. I'm noticing it directly, as you can probably agree, Ali, like that. In my school that I'm teaching at, we have a surplus of 6 teachers, which means teachers that are surplus aren't guaranteed a position in September.
Wow.
So that's all based on enrollment, but also based on the funding for the teachers as well. So it affects a lot. And like, there's little things that a lot of the teachers were talking about in the staff meeting we've had, because we've had a lot of union meetings over the past few weeks. And they're saying, when you take a teacher away, you're not just taking away that classroom teacher, but you're also taking away like the after school curricular activities that one teacher will be responsible for. So for example, today I rushed here from school because I had a wrestling practice I was holding with a coach from the community. If one teacher gets taken away that's volunteering for those kind of sports, that's like a whole group of students that I can't do anything after school.
Yeah, it's like a full ripple effect.
Yeah,
because
so it's,
people always complain about the fact that there aren't enough after school programs, but then when you're cutting the amount of teaching roles, who do you expect to run these programs?
Yeah, and it's a big thing that's happening. Like we've been very tense, like within the teaching profession. I'm in elementary, but I'm also qualified for secondary. Secondary is being hit a lot harder than elementary is right now. But I think the biggest thing is now the students are starting to take notice of this a lot more, because the other day they had the student walkout. All my grade 8 students walked out knowing what was happening. Yeah, so it's happening. I think that education is an investment. It's kind of going backwards, taking the money away from education, because priorities changed. Like the population of students were changing too. The needs were different. More students are being identified as needing special education services and things like that. So we can't just take away from something that we're identifying as a more demand.
That was the most interesting thing that I saw, was seeing the amount of student activism against what was going on. And I remember looking at your tweets and seeing a lot of stuff that you were posting about these walkouts that were taking place. And kudos to the students for taking a charge. I remember, I grew up, and maybe Ali, you can resonate too. When I grew up, that was during like the Mike Harris era of like the PC government. And I remember my like grade 5 teacher hated Mike Harris. Like, she just would curse him every single day. And I remember at one point, I'm not sure if this was something that she wanted us to do or if this was mandated by our entire school, but she made us all write letters to Mike Harris on how he was fucking us all over.
Did it affect you? Because I hear that a lot. Like, I wasn't here during that time when it was happening, but we hear about the Harris era a lot in education. Like, what was that like?
I don't see. I was very young. Like, I was in elementary school.
Okay.
I don't know if Ali, you remember, but I remember for myself, like, I was always very active after school. Like, I think a lot of that probably resonated with like the high schoolers, maybe like some of the older people, because I didn't really notice much. I don't know, Ali, do you remember anything?
I think this kind of ties back in. I think the way the government's playing this off, that this is usual, and we remember this is the last time this happened was with the Harris government, right? With a lot of the arts programming, after school programming being cut. But again, I was fairly young at that point, and didn't take charge. But kudos to all the students that are demonstrating. I think we're living in a very unique time in our lives where our thoughts can be projected out to hundreds and thousands, sometimes millions of people.
No doubt,
right? Instantaneously, and the teachers are active. My mom's on Twitter, and they really encourage teachers to to speak their minds. And I was looking at some of the tweets as well. And the article, Nav, that you shared earlier when you were talking about this show and the topic, and just seeing some teachers with their agendas, talking about today is going to be the day that I get my permanent papers.
Yeah.
And, you're not going to have an opportunity to go back to school tomorrow or on Monday or Tuesday, right? Yeah. It's quite terrifying, and it's really nostalgic for me being here, because I grew up in this neighborhood. I did all my after school activities at UTM, and I went to Arendelle where my mom teaches, and my partner and soon-to-be wife, Lamia, she's a teacher herself too.
So it's running throughout.
Yeah, it's, you know, I talked to my mom today, and you know, it's she's luckily she's okay right now, but you know, friends around her have been affected. And just going back to like Nav, your original point, and you know, this is really affecting us at Ryerson University at the DMZ. We're an academic institution in Ontario right now with the funding cuts. Is, you know, why does education get chopped off, right? And I don't know exactly, like I don't know the intricacy behind, you know, why this is happening, but I think the reason it's happening is because it's the easiest.
Yeah.
Right. And I think that's the most important thing. You know, as Shelique mentioned, this is an investment where you'll see the effects not immediately, right? But in maybe 5 to 10 years, you'll see the effects of this. You know, I can definitely probably say confidently, like, you know, you'll have more crime, right? You'll have more issues in domestic homes, right? Situations will definitely change, and that long-term projection and the ease of doing something like this is probably the real reason this is happening. And there's so many other things that are clouding the government's interest right now, right? And they need to do something big. And you know, the amount of jobs that they've cut, what you mentioned was like what, 3,900?
Yeah.
An example, like in 9 years of DMZ being around, we've helped create 4,000 net new jobs. And how hard it is to create these jobs and cultivate that, and you know, in one sweep, this is all gone, which is so
when
disheartening.
you put it in that perspective, it's crazy.
It's you know, there's 500 companies, and you know, it's not apples to apples comparison, but when that number hit me, I know how proud we are to say that we helped create 4,000 net new jobs in Canada. It's such a piece of pride for us. And in one sweep, you know, a government comes in and decides that they can affect so many thousands of people, and you know, I would say affect so many people's futures, right? So
yeah, and I think you definitely got to an interesting place when we were talking about how this will ladder back to crime and poverty and maybe possibly even mental health, because a lot of the times those after school programs, a lot of them are put in place in impoverished areas that need those after school programs to really prevent a lot of what's going on. As soon as you take them away, as soon as you make classes bigger, I don't see that helping anybody, because, you know, even if you want to go deeper into the history of the curriculum, the elementary school curriculum in Ontario, like EQAO scores haven't been good. Like, it all ladders up to the fact that having bigger classrooms or in reducing the amount of staff isn't the answer.
Yeah. And speaking about like classroom sizes as well, is like we were talking about it with a few other teachers at my school, just things like classroom safety. Like if you have a whole bunch of students in one classroom, just like the things that the people that aren't teachers or in education overlook, like if you have a room full of people, that's a safety issue as well. So it's just like little things like that. The mental health component is also a huge thing too, because if, like, for example, our school, we have a guidance counselor that is shared between four schools. So how is
one guidance counselor?
One guidance counselor.
Wow.
So how is a guidance counselor supposed to sit down and talk with issues with a student when she has to get every grade 8 student from her 4 schools into grade 9?
Yeah.
And has to do all the other stuff that guidance teachers does in order to, you know, help the next wave of students to graduate, and also sit down and speak with, like, it's not possible. So like there's a lot of services that are already efficient on books, but they don't actually work.
How big are the classes that you're teaching right now?
So I'm in special education, so by default my classroom sizes are smaller. So in one class I have 12 students, but they're all working at a grade 2 or 3 grade levels below the expected grade. So that could be due to learning disabilities, it could be due to like poor attendance, it could be due to huge gaps in their learning. So for that, the model is set up to have a smaller classroom, so I can work one-on-one with students, and I have a education assistant as well. But I can just imagine if my education assistant was taken away and those kids are immersed into another huge classroom where they're not getting that one-on-one support because they are a few levels below their grade, what's going to happen to them. They're just going to get lost into the system.
Especially when like it's special needs, like they need extra attention.
Yeah.
They need, specific, accommodations to help them learn.
And it's something like, we even with teachers, it's a bit controversial, like the whole idea of like immersing students into one classroom. Like in BC, they're already been doing it for a while. And it's slowly progressing in Ontario in terms of like de-streaming and putting all students into one classroom. But in order to do that, teachers have to be trained on how to account for all students. Because I feel as if, like, even with this whole thing, the government was saying that they put it out there and they wanted teachers to discuss this and, put their input in. I don't know any teacher that was contacted about this. They throw the information out there, but you have to literally search for it. If it wasn't for the Facebook group that I found that I'm a part of, we wouldn't be able to like send all those emails off with the requirements and suggestions that we were hoping for. So it's things like that. It's like it's the little strategies that they're using. It's kind of, we did our due diligence. We're sending out the information. You just have to look for it.
Oh my God. Yeah. So the public consultation process is obviously broken in that too. Ali, you talk about obviously your mom being a teacher, your fiance is a teacher, you yourself work at an educational institution. Overall, if you could kind of put yourself in their shoes, what would be a way that you would sort of go about making the best out of the situation?
That's a big question. But, again,
so do here on New Theory Radio. What's your theory on that?
It's again, it's really hard because, when you are in a situation of stress, one is not able to, really think about alternative solutions. A lot of times it's just about survival. And, when you have a classroom of overcrowded students where you can't manage, this guidance counselor example is such a shocking one, because I had such a great relationship with my guidance counselor, and she knew a lot of intimate details about me that were not all, I would say, education related. She knew about some of the struggles that I was going through with school and work and, with friends, and really somebody that I trusted, as a guidance counselor, would do. But, what I would say, sort of putting my experience and my entrepreneurship hat on and the work that I see happening at the DMZ and other incubators, accelerators, I hope this is an opportunity as well, right? Where, a lot of times, unfortunately, government does not provide all the solutions that we need and the support. And with looking at other countries, how entrepreneurs have stepped up and helped, sort of level the playing field when it comes to either using technology, innovative ways to come and provide alternative solutions. So I hope that teachers also start thinking more entrepreneurially, using technology, using innovation, and you see more and more teachers coming out and creating alternative solutions, I would say. And then I think this is a good opportunity if we have overcrowded classrooms and we're not having budgets and funds. It's also a good opportunity for us to now looking at the whole education system and the way education is provided in classroom, and just flip it around, right? What do the students really need, and how can you be nimble with the resources that you have and still drive value for them, right? And I don't have the answer for that, but I think there's a lot of smart people out there. There's a lot of really interesting solutions happening within education. And I think there is definitely an opportunity out there right now. I'm just looking at mental health. Right? There's so many amazing solutions out there that provide virtual assistant care that, if one is not able to attend an in-person session, if you're in remote areas, et cetera, they're solving that, right? Anonymously, you can come and talk to somebody who's a licensed professional. So that was an opportunity. And in education, I think there's a lot of gap as well that needs to be filled, and there's amazing stuff happening. There's obviously that could be done more, but again, the human touch is very important, especially if you're dealing with young kids, and especially if you're dealing with individuals who are vulnerable with special needs. You need that extra attention and care. My mom's special needs teacher as well, so I know exactly the effort and care that's taken in. So
yeah, because it definitely, there is an opportunity to kind of disrupt the current model, but to your point, I think especially when you think about elementary school and you think about the social skills that are needed at that age, and then as you progress into middle school and high school, just being able to find who you are or try to get to that place, eventually, a lot of that is better done in a classroom sort of in-person setting. But then it's also interesting because when you look at the innovation that is happening within technology, one crazy example is like the Khan Academy and all that. The fact that there are these online curriculums that exist, I'm almost curious to see how technology will play a role. And maybe it's not with this government. I don't know if this government's going to be the one that's going to be putting this out in the forefront. But is it maybe something down the road where if there are pressures to cut in education, is there an opportunity to make the whole system more flexible?
Well, they're proposing like students in high school take mandatory online courses.
Yeah.
So that's one. But again, it's, as you said, the human touch is important. Like having that adult in the classroom that has some experience teaching the subjects and guiding students towards something that would help them learn better. It is something you can't really replace with technology. But it kind of, when you were talking about like trying to promote those skills, especially with the incubator that you're working with, it's like now the school board are trying to focus more so on things they call global competencies. So it's things such as like, how can you become a self-directed learner? And that goes again to, don't just rely on school to learn. What are you reading outside of school, or what are you doing outside of school? And things like communication, things we take for granted as adults, that we can communicate, have this conversation right now. Not every student knows how to communicate the same way. So like that's another thing that the school board are trying to push more into. How do you communicate with your friends versus your teacher versus a professor, for example? Like how do you go about that? So they are trying to push this new idea of different skills that students will need to know. But yeah, we're always going to be behind in education because the generation are always going to be way more advanced than...
Yeah, and self-directed, in my view, is risky, man. Like, I think about a lot of my successes that I saw in high school. A lot of it was because I found teachers that decided to invest their time in me and help me succeed. And obviously, you have those anomaly students that are able to pick up things very quickly and run with curriculums and run with work and be able to produce some great output.
Yeah.
But then you have some that just really need guidance.
Yeah.
And the challenge is difficult. Like I think about you, Strick, and I just wonder what you and your colleagues are going through at this moment, because it's a tough struggle, because to your point, especially on the special needs side, losing an extra body to help you with your daily tasks is again, what does the teacher sort of wellness plan look like in that instance, right?
It's so true.
Well, even to that, how are you dealing with the stress?
Well, for me, like I'm in a situation where I'm not a full-time contract teacher. Okay. So I
also feel like you never get stressed out. But.
Yeah.
Strick's always chilled out, always happy.
When I came into the profession, with everyone around me that wasn't in education. Like, why are you becoming a teacher right now? Yeah. There's no jobs. And it was a long time before I got hired by the school board as an occasional teacher, which means basically a supply teacher. And then I became a long-term occasional, which means that I'm covering for a term longer than 90 days. So, for example, it could be mental health leave, it could be a maternity leave. And for me, it is tough because, like, even me and my partner, we think about, we want to make plans, but I don't know if I'm going to be working because I don't know if I'm going to have a contract.
Yeah.
And it is always in the back of my head. And like in the back of my head, I'm thinking, will I be working in September? Will I be able to start a new school term in a new classroom? Will I be at the same school I am at right now? Based off what has been going on, no, by the looks of it. But it's hard not to get too bogged down by it, because I knew what I was signing up for when I came in. Like I wasn't expecting the big cuts we're getting right now, but I knew that it was going to be a long wait before I become full-time. I know teachers that have been teaching 8 years that still get surplus pretty much every year in high school. So it's like their insecurity is just like mine, apart from they're already contract teachers, so they're guaranteed a spot whenever they get surplus. But yeah, it's tricky.
Yeah, even on social media, when I see people that were probably a little older than me when I was in university that decided to go down the teaching route, like they're in their mid 30s, and that's when they become permanent. Like they'll post on Facebook, you know, it's been a minute.
Just sign the
I've been
papers.
grinding, just sign the papers. Like Ali was mentioning, like some of
It's
those
like getting a
posts.
record deal, man.
Yeah, it is like getting a record deal because a lot comes with being a full-time teacher and really having that position. Because you know, to your point, I always had an interest in teaching when I was growing up too. And again, similar to the feedback you were given when people found out you wanted to pursue education, that was always the feedback I got was, hey, there's no jobs, you know, here in Ontario, they need French teachers. You know, if you want to become an elementary school teacher or you become a kindergarten teacher, if you want to become a high school teacher in business, you have to go to New Brunswick. Like there was all this rumors and the speculation regarding the education system, and it was very discouraging. And I think these education cuts don't help that. It's crazy. Ali, any final thoughts on this topic?
Yeah, I think, you know, going back to there's an opportunity, but I've also another fear is, you know, like yourself, I didn't grow up here. I came here during elementary school. I grew up in Pakistan. And in Pakistan, you know, the level of support that the government provides towards education is negligible. You know, there are private schools, but the concept of ghost schools and nobody's showing up, empty schools, and how the private sector jumped in to seize this opportunity. And I fear this because I never wanted to send my kids to private school. I love public schools because that's where you see, you know, kids from all backgrounds,
diversity, classes,
like,
everything.
You know, classes and you know, I soaked it all in when I moved to Canada, and specifically during elementary school days, because I was a kid in a candy store. You know, nobody would cut me from a team. I would just sign up for every running club. You know, to play, you know, every instrument. To, you know, it's a really amazing environment. But I think the model is going to shift a little bit, where more and more, you know, high caliber private schools are going to come in, and irregular. You know, I would say family living in Ontario will think about it twice, that, you know, I'm not going to get the same level of care and attention, and I value my child's growth over, you know, quality. Lots of families sacrifice that. And you know, if you look at the U.S., even in Pakistan, I remember there were a few schools that it was, you know, your life goal to get into that school.
Wow.
And your whole trajectory in life would change if you got into one school, because there's 15 or, you know, whatever schools per city, or I'm not, just don't quote me in the numbers, but if you were aspiring to go abroad, you know, those are the schools that would be accredited. So, you know, these are the kind of things that I fear, you know, if in the next several years, if I do have a family as well, would I have to now think about private school as well? So
yeah, and that's something that I see a lot of young families who have children that are approaching the years of when they're going to enter, you know, junior kindergarten, even preschool. My mother-in-law is a Montessori teacher for preschool, and it's something that, you know, she has to deal with consistently, is just seeing these parents and just the amount of money that they're spending on premium education, and how she's seen it, you know, straightforward when it comes to some of these parents actually really struggling, but they do it for the sense that they want the best for their children. So I feel like we can go the entire episode on this topic. But you know, it's real, and I'm glad that I got both your perspectives on it. I want to switch gears a little bit and just stay on the education front, because we're going to be talking education for the entire episode. And Ali, you work at the Ryerson DMZ, the Digital Media Zone, which is
number one, baby.
Yeah, number one. Right, you know, chosen as the number one university-based incubator in the world. And what's unique about the Ryerson DMZ, outside of the fact that, you know, it is highly ranked as one of the best university-based incubators, it's truly become like the anomaly or the gold standard when it comes to educational institutions looking at investing into facilities that help individuals at any stage of their lives. That makes sense. Like, it's not just students. Like, you're having entrepreneurs who are probably, you know, who probably have gone down different paths in their lives that are able to go to the DMZ for guidance. And it's really, to me, it's really changed the definition of what a university can really be when it comes to providing education, but as well as providing growth for people who want to see it in their everyday lives. So I wanted to get both your theories on this new university model that we're seeing when it comes to university-based incubators. And to your point, you touched on it earlier when it comes to sort of disruption in education and it changing in the future. Do you feel that ultimately institutions like the DMZ will eventually impact the way we perceive traditional degrees or even traditional university curriculum? Because the fact that the DMZ itself is such a hands-on institution when it comes to fostering entrepreneurship, does that change the narrative on how we should, be studying for courses or getting our degrees? And I'd love to get your perspective on that.
Yeah, no, that's a great question and a large question as well. and
we ask the big questions on New Theory Radio.
And
big theories.
Only theories, big theories. So just maybe taking a step back, I think what's happening at the DMZ is very special. It's very unique, and I think it starts off from the top. If you look at the history for Ryerson University, right? Ryerson University has been in existence for about approximately 75 years. It's been a university for only 25. It was a polytechnic back in the day, right? And for Ryerson University, I would say the evolution and the change that really happened was that from a university-wide perspective, it took a strong bet on entrepreneurship and innovation. And DMZ was, I would say, the first one that really got, to another level. It was the flagship and the mothership now for what's happening within entrepreneurship and innovation. And the need for DMZ just didn't happen overnight. It came from students. And the problem that we were looking to solve, and we're in a university campus right now at UTM, and it's deserted right now, before Thursday for a long weekend. But
I think exams as well.
Yeah. So students were coming to our former president, Sheldon Levy, at that point, and they said that, there's a strong focus on campus on entrepreneurship and innovation, but we don't have a physical space to build our businesses. That was the problem, and the library closes at 10 o'clock. So Sheldon, decided, he's like, hey, you know what, this is a really interesting problem, and let's tackle this head on, and he didn't shy away. So he went to Yonge and Dundas, and in Google's old office, took real estate. So, probably the busiest intersection in Canada, one of the most expensive real estates, and made a statement saying that, we want to do entrepreneurship and innovation. We're not going to shy away. And it started off literally with us, I would say not begging, but pretty close to getting warm bodies into the room. And now slowly and steadily, we've started changing mindsets, changing businesses, and now, putting Canada and Ryerson University on the map. And also an important thing that Ryerson did was, this is, I would say, 21st century education. It's not just the DMZ on an island doing this itself, right? There's coursework happening where students can actually take course credits, Entrepreneurship 101, that they can build businesses, they can build projects, social enterprises, ventures. There's 10 other zones like this on campus. We call it the zone learning and zone network model. So there's the social venture zone, the legal innovation zone, the fashion zone. Whatever you want to do, you can be hands-on, build businesses, actually get university credits for that. And going back to the I would say, strategic thinking from Ryerson's executive team is that we never were narrow-minded and we never closed our doors. We decided that, hey, we're a university campus in downtown Toronto and we can attract amazing talent if we just open our doors. So the DMZ, all these different zones, you can tap into all these resources practically for nothing and have no affiliation with Ryerson. So that effect has brought in so many amazing people. And, that cross-collaboration, the learning effect when you're sitting with somebody who's a serial entrepreneur and you're a student from Ryerson coming in doing an internship, the growth and learning is amazing. And, I would say Ryerson students, there's a swagger about them. They're entrepreneurial, they're hustlers, they're building stuff, and there's a very interesting vibe across the campus from an entrepreneurship and innovation perspective. So I think the core things that happened was that it's not just a standalone project, the DMZ. There's a lot happening on campus from an educational perspective, theoretical perspective. There's an executive level, I would say, commitment to funding this, because it's not easy, and it's a long-term perspective. You won't see returns in the first couple of years. Now we're seeing companies that have gone and raised the double digits. Our companies from the DMZ have raised close to $500 million in capital, created 4,000 net new jobs. So it goes back, and now we have those case studies, but did not happen overnight. And the third piece that I would say is keeping our doors open and welcoming everybody from a collaboration standpoint, from an attraction standpoint, and from a learning standpoint.
Yeah, and that's been truly powerful, because I remember even visiting you at the DMZ, and almost as if when you walk in, you start to feel inspired by what's going on, and just the level of community that exists within the actual facility. And I love that you talk about the swagger that the Ryerson students have, because I remember when I was applying to university, no one really applied to Ryerson, or like people did apply to Ryerson, but it wasn't profoundly looked upon as being a good institution.
I didn't apply to Ryerson.
Yeah. And I remember one of the things that because you and I went to McMaster together, one of the things that really struck me was when I think you and I met up in downtown for lunch, and you told me, like, man, like I might even just take some courses at Ryerson because I'm just so inspired with what's going on around me.
And it's the same thing that you were talking about. How do you teach the 21st century soft skills? So there's a huge emphasis on communication, public speaking, sales, marketing, putting yourself out there. That's how you create businesses, and that's the reason you're not just working in a classroom in your own bubble and shell. You're literally in downtown Toronto, out there building stuff and breaking shit, making things happen. And it's a strong cultural shift. I would say the location makes a huge difference, but just the people that we're attracting and the diversity, I think that's a big deal.
Strick, when it comes to institutions like the DMZ that are really challenging the status quo when it comes to the way we consume education, as an educator, is this something that you necessarily are a fan of, or do you think there's different ways that this can be integrated to what's going on currently?
No, I love it. A few institutions have reached out to schools as well. So what they're trying to do now is promote a lot of inquiry-based learning. So you can learn skills if you inquire about a certain task. So I've had examples of the schools that I've been in, of students learning how to create their own app. And they're not actually using computers. They're just thinking of the concept of what is a problem that everyone has, and how can you find a solution to it. That way of thinking, there's so much that you can do. And of course, you need a lot of guidance in how to get to the final result. But that way of thinking is something that I feel as if is needed in education. It needs to be modeled and also helped by people that are in that industry, and also with teachers as well. But that inquiry process is something that I'm noticing a lot more is being pushed within the school board. Also the fundamentals as well. So you have to know the basics in order to be able to inquire about certain things. So we're talking about communication. Now we're rolling back in mathematics to the foundations of just teaching how to multiply and apply that to different situations. In terms of the incubator, I'm not sure whether it's just me of where I live. I live right downtown Toronto, but I feel as if I've seen a lot more incubators and professional development for adults now, and for people that are either already in a profession or trying to top up their education. So there's places like Brain Station that I've seen, like HackU, there's Creative Mornings, all these places and all these panels that are happening. Every week there's a panel happening, right? So
it's a panel right here.
Yeah. So it's just interesting to see that people are willing to expose themselves to a lot of new ideas, and just our idea of failure is so different to what was previously taught. We're allowed to fail, and we're allowed to learn from the mistakes in an environment that is created for us. So that's something I'm embracing, and I'm trying to encourage students to go down that route as well.
I just want to pick up on the failure piece, and I think that's something that's so important in just your life, your career, your personal life, and doing many things and failing fast and growing and all those different things. You can't learn that in a classroom setting.
No, you can't.
You cannot. And just having experience failing and, you know, falling on your face, and, you know, sometimes it takes you a little bit longer to get up, but you do get up and you're able to do that. That is the best lesson that you can learn. And, you know, if you're even in an 8-week incubator program and you tried something, you talked to 100 customers, potential customers, and they all said that your idea is crap. You know, it smacks you, it changes your perspective.
Learn from it, right? You
learn from it. And I think, you know, we talked about the communication pieces and all that, but just that own, you know, experience in itself, the failure piece is such a big one. It's a huge one.
And that's a challenge that I felt as millennials was something that, and maybe I'm speaking on my own perspective here, but that's a common challenge that I sensed when being in university, was that what we thought the real life was going to be wasn't most of the time.
Like, I'm not gonna lie, when I went to university, I was like so gassed. I was like, yes. But there was a lot of other people that were literally there just...
So little Strick walking around New York University, just ready to start his life.
But like, when I went there, I realized that it wasn't as I expected it. Like, a lot of people were there just because they needed the degree. They weren't really there to enjoy the process of learning, which the incubators pick up on. Like, you're there to learn the process and the steps. And I feel as if now your new resume is how many businesses you've tried to set up, fail, rebranded. Like, all that's the new resume now. Like, how many podcasts have you heard where people are telling their creation stories, and it's like, oh yeah, I set up this business, it failed, we had no money in the beginning, and look at us now, we're worth like such and such millions. Literally the new resume now is what can you build, and what did you learn from that process.
What have you seen? You know, people, a new concept that I've seen on resumes is talk about your travel stories, right? And the fact that you didn't go and see the world. For some employers, it's a flag. Right? You're not investing in yourself. You're not investing in diverse experiences. I've seen that. And, you know, before we were, and I would say this is, you know, during our times, that, you know, you were scared to have a gap year or a gap on your resume. That, like, oh my God, I finished my job in May, and in June, like, oh, you know, there's a gap. What are they going to say? And man, I was trying new things. I was figuring it out. And it's you know, going back to, it's like people are embracing the fact that life has changed, the way we're experiencing it and what we're doing with it. So
this kind of reminds me of the conversation I had last week with the convenience store worker that's working that where we got our kombucha from. Because I remember I so what my ritual now is I go into that convenience store, grab a kombucha, and then I do the show, and then thankfully Strick and Ali both join me with the kombucha tip. Shout out to Kavita Juices, handcrafted, send that check over. But I was having a conversation with her, and I thought she was super young, so for me just to be conversational, I was like, hey, how are exams going? And she's like, yeah, they're going pretty good. And then I found out that she was actually someone in like her mid-20s, like her late 20s, that was just doing like an undergrad degree. And after talking with her for a little bit, she had a lot of starts and stops throughout the last few years. And then she told me, she's like, I think I'm always going to be in school one way or another, whether I take a few years in between and decide to work. She's like, I like learning, and because it keeps me fresh and keeps me going. I think she's working on her second degree, and I walked out of that feeling just very inspired, because I actually went back to school last year too, over the summer, and this is after doing like an undergrad and an MBA, where when I was done my MBA, I was like, fuck, I'm never going back to school. And then last summer when I found myself back in a classroom, I was like, well, this is funny. I totally went against that. But what I love about incubators is really, to your point, Strick and Ali, is just the lifelong learning and the safe environment it creates. Like, doesn't the DMZ have like fucked up nights or something like that?
So we've hosted fuck up nights.
Fuck up nights, yeah. Not fucked up nights. Fuck up nights.
It's called, and it's a global movement. And I happen to know Marsha, who runs it in Toronto, and you know, you'd be surprised. They had the owner of Kaplansky's.
Mean pastrami, bro.
Kaplansky's in their last one. But, you know, so many tech entrepreneurs, you know, individuals have come forward. The one that we hosted, at DMZ had a York University professor talk about how he got fired. You know, he's a professor of marketing, how he got fired for making these stupid decisions. So, you know, you come to the show, you start off, there's a fuck up wall. You write about your fuck ups, and you're networking based on, you know, how big your fuck up was.
That's a great idea.
Yeah. So it's you know, it's talking about failures, but I think the safety net from an incubator standpoint is there's no real secret sauce for incubators, right? There's all of them are pretty much doing what we like to classify the DMZ as the 4 C's, right? So you're focusing on coaching. So whatever method you have, you know, you provide entrepreneurs in residence, mentors, and these are like your guidance counselor if you think about it in school, right? Then you provide access, or you give capital, right? You provide access for the companies to create customers. And the most important thing, which is what you were touching about now, right, is the safety net, is that community, right, the 4 C's. And what we see is the entire community at DMZ is invested in your successes, and they're there to back you up when you have your failures. An example of this, you know, what I see in community is every Friday at 4 o'clock, you know, if you guys are around downtown, more than welcome to come. We have an event called Good Scotch Friday.
Oh.
At DMZ, we're, you know, now it's called Good Co. But its legacy name is Good Scotch, and we're across 5 floors. There's 60 to 80 companies in the trenches building their businesses, and we regularly bring everybody out on Friday. And the whole idea is, you talk about your weekly wins, but you also talk about your weekly losses. And the losses piece, I've seen tears that have come out saying, people, hey guys, it was a good run. I'm closing up shop.
Wow.
And then seeing them 6 months back reapply with a couple of other folks, they're like, hey, with energy. I'm back in. It's a cycle of life, and it's just like embracing that fact. And the community aspect, whatever that might be, is just finding your tribe. And I feel like incubators and accelerators really do a good job on creating that environment.
Yeah, I just want to touch on, you're talking about that wouldn't happen if you guys didn't advocate for the space, right? If the students didn't advocate. And I just want to touch on, we've been talking about tech, but also in the art world in Toronto.
I was going to ask you, because you go to a lot of photography meetups.
Yeah, so me and a lot of my friends, we go on these photo walks, and it wouldn't have happened if we didn't go to this one. It was like a free photography course called the Creator Class at Free, and I met a whole bunch of people from that, and that created the community part that you were talking about. But I was also at a panel at Artscape Daniel Spectrum, which is the new artscape that they have down by the waterfront, and that was great because one of my friends was actually speaking on the panel, Kazim, and he has this I don't know how to describe, but let's say organization called New Currency, and their whole idea is connecting people from different parts of the world that are involved in art. So if you're a DJ in Toronto, they have a black book of DJs in Paris that you can connect with when you go there, so you can get a gig, for example, or go on their radio show. So I feel as if now we're realizing and appreciating how important having that community is, how to communicate with other people, and the benefits of it. We can all eat together. Those companies that are in the DMZ right now, they may be competing later on down the road when they develop, but right now they're learning from each other, right?
Yeah. Just to add to that community piece, I think it's so important to have that community. And the one thing that's important, I think it really weeds out the people who are not doing it for the right reasons.
That's so true.
Back in the day, if people were doing it for the quick wins and doing it for their own personal gains and interest, in such a connected environment in today's day and age, and when you have that community, you can't have any bad apples, right? And somebody will share that information. So when before it was the dreaded investor, everybody was scared about. You were succumbed to them because they were going to invest in you. But our community talks to each other that if an investor comes in and they've done a bad deal or bad investment or led somebody astray, that person will automatically be called out because of that community, and everybody protects each other. So I think the long-term pros and perspective that a community would provide is huge.
That's
yeah.
No, that's super deep. You guys are just. This is a really thought-provoking conversation. No, it's just good to get these perspectives because I think ultimately, at its core, it's really around community and collaboration. I find, and the fact that we do have these university-led incubators as well as these institutions that are being created to help, new upcoming and established artists to get that safe space to want to do work and want to build on each other, I think is so important. But it kind of makes me think about our third and last topic, and we touched on earlier. So for those that don't know, I record this show at the University of Toronto in Mississauga at the CFRE studios, and right now the campus is pretty empty because I think we're approaching the tail end of exams here when you're a university student. And there's definitely individuals that are probably more senior that are finishing up their final exams and not sure what they want to do afterwards. I remember one of the reasons I think Ali and I got very close when we did, not only throughout university, but even after, was because we would have these conversations around, what do you want to do? Where do you want to go? What motivates you? And I think, when you think about how young you are when you stop university, whether you're 21, 22 years old, you're still really young. That to jump right into the workplace can be a bit overwhelming, but to even have pressure on you to figure out your life is always at an all-time high, especially when you surround yourself with people that maybe were your colleagues in university, but then outside of university end up becoming your competitors because you're kind of going for the same opportunities. So what I wanted to bring this back to is really around whether, how, and maybe there's not even a theory around this. Is mainly just to get both your perspectives on how you ended up finding yourself after university. Was there ever, are you on the path that you thought you would have been when you were in this stage of an undergrad student that was able to make mistakes and learn new things, or have you diverted a little bit? And if you did divert, how did that diversion take place? And Strick will begin with you.
Sure, yeah. I feel as if now when I'm asking students about the future, I really do try and avoid the question, what do you want to do, or what do you want to be when you're older? Because look how many hats everyone in this room wears. Like we're not just one thing. Like we're not just working for one organization. We're not just focusing all our attention on one thing. So I feel as if the best thing that I've been focusing on is figuring out how I learn best and figuring out what skills I have and what skills I need to develop and focus on more. So, for example, when I was graduating high school, I was like, oh my God, I have to go to university and then I have to figure out what's going on. And it was kind of like this gray area of like, you're just thrown into this pot with everyone else competing for just life and survival. So I feel as if for me, I did go through the university process. For some of my other friends, they went straight into the workforce, or they went into college, or they did an apprenticeship after school. And I feel as if when I talk to them now, their priorities are different, so they're focusing their attention on different things, such as trying to improve themselves, whether that's through health, through learning new things, whether it's financial wealth and becoming someone that is strategic with where they're spending their money and how they're spending their money. And in regards to like how I've found myself, I don't think anyone finds himself in the side. That's a deep philosophical. I'm on the path doing it, but
do you feel like you're on the right path?
I feel so. Yeah, like I feel as if I love the profession that I am in. I love education, and I also have hobbies that help me become a better educator as well. So through photography, through music, through being on this panel, I'm able to have discussions and be around different people that think differently to me. And I think that's super important, just surrounding yourself with people that aren't just focused in and on your profession. Having people and friends that are architects and people that are in photography and friends that are artists, it's really cool just to hear their insight of how to create things. We're all doing the same thing, but in different ways. And like reading books based on areas that you're not too comfortable in to kind of get yourself out of the comfort zone. I think that's one of the things that's the most daunting when you're in like you're graduating high school or you're trying to get into post-secondary or into the workforce is like, I'm not supposed to be here, or I'm not supposed to be learning this. How is it going to relate to me? You can always take a lesson from something. But for students nowadays, it's a lot tougher because it's so competitive and everyone's trying to one-up them on each other by, as we said, like they're getting these courses that they take for 8 weeks so they can become a better person communicating, picking up on soft skills, so they can, you know, have that edge over someone else that doesn't. And it's tough. And you have to fail a lot more now too. Like, and I remember when I was going through the process of school, social media wasn't really a big thing we had to worry about. But now, how many recruiters go on Facebook and Twitter and check your feed to make sure that you match up with the culture of the company?
Exactly.
As well, right? So there's a lot to think about when you're a student nowadays.
It's definitely a lot more pressure. Because I'm seeing, just like what you mentioned when it comes to social media, like I'm seeing even just with the place that I work and even other places that I've worked in the past where they will do a social media check. Like they will check your background to see what you were involved in, if there's anything incriminating, anything that, you know, may not be a good fit with what they're trying to convey in their workplace. Do you, looking back on your time in university, would you do anything differently? No, I actually took a year off from university and went back to England. So I was at York. Before or after?
This was during. So after my first year, I actually went back, working for a little bit. And then I was like, you know what? I really want to just go back and just get this done. And then that was kind of, having that year off was really eye-opening. As you said, like gap years and things are kind of looked down upon, especially in England. Like people usually do it straight after school. They don't do it like after their first year. But I feel as if that made me realize the importance of what I was doing and for me to just give it my all. Would I change it? I guess I would make better financial decisions. Like if I would have, you know, used my student loan in different ways and things like that. But other than that, like I value the process of it all. Like I wouldn't really change anything. Wow. Like I really loved just the whole process of being out of my comfort zone. Like none of my family members have been to a university in Canada, so I was the first one. So it was kind of like I was learning everything. Like I was the first year student that paid brand new, paid full price for brand new textbooks. What an idiot, right? So like all those little things. Like there's a campus.
We've all done it.
There's a bookstore off campus that's like half the price.
And then you go to try to buy it back.
Yeah,
and then you get
like,
like 10, like a tenth of the price.
Yeah, but I enjoyed the process of being a student, and for me it was like I really just enjoyed learning. I was taking courses that I had interest in and also I had no idea about beforehand. So I was able to learn with other people, which was amazing. Like having those discussions that you do after your lecture and tutorials, I was like, what? Yeah. People are thinking like this?
That's crazy.
And it was, I enjoyed it.
Yeah. Ali, what about you, man? Because I remember, you know, I was a business undergrad. You were a kin undergrad. And then now you're running point on partnerships at the DMZ, man. There's no kinesiology about that. So
no kin about that.
Yeah. So how would you describe sort of your journey after university? And again, same question that I asked Strick. Would you have done things differently?
So for me, it's, again... you know, if I have to look back and to see where I am right now and just even starting off building a plan, there's no way. Like, to be honest, I didn't even know what an incubator and accelerator was, you know, when I was in university. I was destined to become probably a physiotherapist or a sports medicine doctor. At that time, my biggest inspiration was a guy named Dr. Ali. You know, Dr. Ali Fagani. I did all my high school volunteer hours with him. I tore my ACL being a young rook playing basketball with my laces open. Don't do that. You know,
he literally broke his ankles
by myself. You know, and, you know, that was the thing. Came from Pakistan and just wanted to do everything right. And the body's not made for basketball. Just tore my ACL, and I did kin and just, you know. Going back to, like, you know, what you mentioned, and you know, kind of bringing back some inspiration. I feel like I want to go back to school, like the whole process. You know, it seemed very daunting at that point, but just going through that whole journey, and I don't regret it at all in that sense. And I think for me, a lot of it was luck. A lot of it was just, serendipity. But my whole journey is like I started working for a transitional homeless shelter right after out of university in Kin, where all my colleagues were working, going to school or all these different things, and they took me up because primarily I was South Asian and a male, and they're like, they need individuals who can work in this environment. But this was, taking my background working in the healthcare, applying this to in a very different setting, and working. This was with the Peel region. Doing that experience, I remember I was on some international committees, and I went, at that point was looking, they sent me for a day conference. I was super happy just because I was getting out of work. But at that point, they started talking about, CEDA, and I didn't even know what CEDA was, but the Canadian International Development Agency had all these programs for youth under 30 to go abroad and do international internships. And I literally applied and, put everything in it, but I got an opportunity to go to Nairobi. And I spent a year there, and I thought that when I was going to be going to Nairobi, I'd be learning about international development and changing the world. But I had a great time. I traveled incredibly. I went to almost more than 35 cities across Africa, traveling by myself. But that's really where I saw the power and impact of technology. And all the people that I was surrounding myself, the community aspect, people who were leaving consulting jobs, building really amazing businesses, people, from Ivy League schools, and Nairobi is a hub, for the financial services sector. I would say justice, banking, technology in Africa, right? And in Nigeria would be another one. But Nairobi is a huge hub. So I saw all these amazing things, and I decided that if I wanted to do something, and there's a trend in me, I would say in my family as well. My brother works on policy issues within the education sector. Is if I wanted to work on something macro, I had to go back to school and do a lot of learning, and probably go work in the government sector, become a teacher or something along those lines. Or the second avenue would be technology. That's something I can do really, really fast. And I came back, burned all of my savings. Like literally came back. I used to have a public mobile cell phone from like literally the gas station, and I made a list of the top 10 companies that were working in technology at that point, and one of the companies was Extreme Labs, and I got in on the ground floor there, and there was no turning back for me. And for me, my learning has been all after work. So I got involved in the community. I doing hackathons, going to meetups. I've probably done 10 hackathons, organized 6 or 7 myself, and just countless organizations do the 50-hour work weeks, 55, but 25 to 30 hours was just doing community work, developing myself, developing my skills. And one thing led to another. And now if I look back at it, I don't even know how this all happened, where it all started. And I actually, United Way had a session for new immigrants, and just like how to get a job within the tech sector or whatnot. And I spoke on a panel. I'm like the wrong person to talk about this stuff because honestly, I don't even know how this all happened, but it was just taking one opportunity at a time, going back into the, when you asked about kinesiology, right? I think any degree you take, you're learning how to problem solve, you're learning how to communicate transferable skills, the inquiry piece, right? Which is super hands-on in a science-based program. It's very McMaster offered problem-based learning, right? So, and it's very heavy coursework. So you're learning how to time manage, all those different things, crisis management. So I think I learned a lot in university. It doesn't matter, irrespective of the degree, and I've taken that and applied it into a very different setting. And asking about, what would I change? And I think I did way too much, and like yourself, I was very, very big on graduating in 4 years. I was working a part-time job. I was playing in a band. Yeah. I was in a very, very difficult program in university, and all those other issues that were coming through. I think I was really worked up when I graduated, and I didn't take any time for myself. And taking a semester off, taking some time off, or even taking some additional other courses, or doing a part-time a program. I did my minor in music actually in university, which I am really happy that I did. But I think I could have taken some extra time and just really enjoyed learning. You know, that whole process. I don't regret anything, but it felt like a blur. It feels like a blur to me. That 4 years, that huge time investment just went away. If I had to do it again, I'd really slow down. Maybe take, you know, instead of 5 courses and taking all science courses, maybe taking some other courses, right? And exploring and creating some really good relationships. So I really just sort of plowed through those 4 years. But yeah, again.
Yeah, and it's the whole message around slowing down is interesting because I've been meeting a lot more students who don't necessarily feel the pressure to be done in 4 years. Like they're more than willing to take a year off, or even after they're done the 4 years, to go travel. Like I find that maybe they saw people like us that maybe had ambitions when it came to, you know, let's finish our degree, let's find that job, let's make the money, then let's get married, have kids, and happily ever after. That they probably saw the burnout that our generation
and it's
faced.
Never a direct path either, right?
Yeah, and maybe, and I'm hoping like they're learning from it, because then you're meeting individuals like the convenience store worker that's like, you know, been taking breaks on and off, but still trying to get into education.
Doing it for the right reason.
100%.
They're not doing it for that piece of paper.
And it's like what Ali said as well. It's like those transferable skills, you don't necessarily have to go to school for them. You could be running this radio station right now and have those transferable skills to develop an app. You're going to know that it's that there's a problem within this sector, try and find a solution, market that solution. So there is a big focus on transferable skills and in career processes, but in school as well, now I'm noticing it's not just a push for university anymore. It's a push for how do you learn best, and how can you take the next steps to be where you want to be.
It's almost like setting up the student for success, versus no, you have to fit in this mold because we've defined university as being the end all be all. Even people that used to choose to go to college, they used to get scrutinized, be like, oh, they're taking the easy way out, or they're not going to go anywhere. And then even like trades, I think you mentioned trades earlier. Trades was always looked down upon when I was growing up. Now, anyone who's pursuing trades, good for them, because they're going to be making some serious money, like coming out of school, like coming out of trade school, because those skills are so in demand, but some people are not interested in them. You're almost carving out that niche for yourself. Yeah. I find that to be the most interesting thing when it comes to a lot of education conversations is I'm seeing a lot more individuals slowing down and really taking their time. And, you know, I myself did the 4 years, was super determined to find a job, didn't find the job that I necessarily wanted. So I thought the best solution would be to go back and do my master's, do my MBA. It was a co-op MBA. But then it was always like I was trying to live up to something. And it wasn't until last year, actually a year ago, when I actually just took a hard stop and took some time out for myself, that it really provided me that perspective. And there was a part of me that wished I experienced that earlier, because I think it allowed me to think about things holistically versus always having this constant pressure that I need to be doing this, need to be doing that, I need to be on par or greater than people in my network, because if I'm not, I'm going to be looked down upon. A lot of it was really self-confidence focused, which I thought was interesting.
I can totally, I know that feeling.
Yeah.
I still feel that.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. And I feel like, you know, once you feel it, it never goes away.
Yeah, it's true.
But I think the goal is to maybe get that peace of mind, if it exists. I don't know. Yeah. Did you get a lot of peace of mind in Nairobi when you were out there?
Nairobi was definitely not it wasn't peace of mind.
Yeah.
I don't think I've learned that much in such a short amount of time.
Yeah.
From a culture perspective, from a development perspective, it was amazing. And, you know, I encourage everybody to go spend at least a year somewhere else where you don't know anybody else and you have to figure things out. Like, you know, you need to do a lot of those textbook screw ups that you did, right? And I did that, you know, throughout my journey. I think peace of mind is, you know, some people find peace of mind when they're exhausted and, you know, they're working throughout. It's all about perspective. And I think for me, peace of mind was I did 10-day meditation retreat 3 years ago now, in you know, Christmas time, like where everybody is, you know, spending time with their family and like,
spending mad money.
spending mad money. I remember coming back on Christmas Eve and just everybody sitting down and people laughing at me. Essentially, they're like, "Oh, you become a monk, eh?"
Where'd you go for that?
I went to the Vipassana meditation retreat in North Bay.
Oh, wow.
That place,
Yeah, and that's where I felt, you know, it took me 5 days, where every day I thought I was going to quit. But after the 4th or 5th day, I really found some sort of peace, and highly recommend that if you haven't, because think about the fact that, you know, now we're all probably in our 30s or getting there. You know, we haven't shut our minds or shut up, you know, in 30 years. Right?
Yeah.
We've constantly been talking, and our brain is just hyper active, and allowing yourself to just slow down and, you know, not talk, not make any communication, and have everything done for you is a very different experience.
Yeah.
And a really good friend of mine who's in the advertising world, you know, he, for 7 years, he's been telling me, he's like, Ali, I know who you are, what kind of person you are. This is something you need to do. You know, it's good for you. And I want to continue that. And, you know, we had Jack Dorsey, CEO of Twitter and Square at DMZ 2 weeks ago.
Yeah.
He talked about the fact that he sleeps 9 hours a day and meditates 2 hours a day and works out for an hour.
And that's on top of all the work he does.
He manages, or like he is, you know, the founder and CEO of the two most different yet exciting organizations out there.
That's so fascinating, because you always hear about these CEOs never sleeping. Like
I feel like we're changing that idea that, like, I sleep when I'm dead. Like, that whole philosophy is flawed, right? Because you need to have, like, if I was to not sleep and just do lesson plans all day and come up with these crazy ideas,
oh man, it's
I'll
burnout.
be burned out, and the kids will notice.
That's like, I remember, like, hashtag no sleep gang. Like, everyone was on this whole tip a few years ago about, I'll sleep when I'm dead.
Yeah, like 8 hours.
I'm always
is
up.
Gym nowadays.
I'm totally, like, I'm the one up early, going to sleep late, up early, you know, getting it. Now it's, hey, slow down. You know, even now, like, this coming weekend for Easter, like, one of the things I'm looking forward to is just having some relaxation time at a Scandinavian spa. And that's because number one, just again looking at the grind that sometimes I put myself through because of just internal pressures, and then looking at just the stuff that my wife's dealing with at work, you know, without scheduling this peace of mind time and really looking forward to it, and not just doing it like once a year, like making it sort of a consistent part of your life, I think is so important, man. And I think the earlier someone can realize that, whether it be outside of university or even during university, I think the better.
Yeah, and it shouldn't be a luxury as well. Like, it shouldn't be something that only the privileged people have access to.
Exactly, I agree.
Everyone should be able to just have time. Time is so expensive.
Just to tie back to education, did anyone you see that article about, I think in the U.S., instead of detention, they made the kids meditate, and it actually made, like, fix their behavior, I think, as well.
Yeah, I believe it.
Yeah. That's fascinating. I feel like that's a whole different episode. We can just theory on meditation and how it changed your life. Now, I want to thank the both of you for joining me, man. This was very uplifting, very engaging.
I feel like this was a kind of like a meditation.
Yeah, it was, man.
Like, you know, having the kombucha and it's relaxing.
And it's a heavy topic as well. Like, I do feel optimistic about everything that we've discussed.
Yeah.
And it's just having these conversations, it just makes me realize that I'm not the only one that's
no, exactly. Right? That's the goal, man. Everyone has a theory on something, and I think the theories always align when it comes to, you know, something like education. And, you know, whether you're an educator, whether you come from a family of educators, whether you're someone that, you know, always appreciates education, I think, you know, at its core, it's so important in every aspect of your life. And I think we need to do our best to preserve it.
You know, and I want to just give you a shout out for actually putting this out there as a topic, right? And,
thanks, man.
And, you know, it's something that I've been reading about. I heard from my mom, but the fact that we spent an hour together talking about it really internalizes a lot of aspects for this. So I want to thank you for making me a little bit more aware of the events that are going out right now, and like what we can do. And yeah, I really enjoyed the conversation.
Honestly, you both you guys made it easy because of your backgrounds.
Thank you, man.
And I always wanted to do an episode that revolved around education because, again, like I mentioned, after my master's, I thought I'd never go back to school and I thought I never needed it. But then I remember a year ago going back to school and feeling safe again, feeling like I could make a mistake and not worry about it and not be scrutinized, not be fired, not be, not have my raise taken away. Like, it's like this was such a safe space. I think we need more safe spaces like that, and I'm glad that we have things like incubators and educators and like these spaces where artists can go and learn new skills. Because I think without those, we wouldn't be able to succeed.
And New Theory Radio.
Yeah, New Theory Radio. Thanks for the plugs. Actually, before we conclude, where can listeners hit you guys up? Estrick, we'll begin with you, man.
Yeah,
you have a lot on the go. You just launched your website.
Yeah, so bystrictlystill.com. That's where my photography is. I have a blog there where I post the music that I've been putting together over the
weekly
past
playlist.
Yeah,
so, great work playlist. If you're looking for
yeah.
a good work playlist and you're tired of Spotify, hit up Strictly Steel's
Yeah, it's like
Pod.
having human curated playlists. If you want to find some new songs or just have a nice playlist.
And you like talk in between too, man. I love it.
Gotta get my disc jockey on,
I know it's like a BBC Radio, Apple Beats One, just with Strictly Steel.
Just done at home, DIY, man. Don't wait on anyone else. Just start it yourself.
Yeah, exactly. I love it. So just hit you up. And then what are your social channels?
Yeah, so my Instagram is by Strictly Still as well.
Oh,
so
sick.
by Strictly
So you
Still.
changed everything.
Yeah,
right?
yeah. By
Good for you,
Strictly
man.
Still across all platforms.
Check out the branding, bro. Ali, you said that you were on an Instagram hiatus, man. Are you back now?
You can follow me. I don't have much of a brand game going on. Very simple. Ali _Taiyeb for Twitter as well as Instagram. And more, I'm on the career tip. You can tag me or hit me up on LinkedIn or anything.
Big boy profile.
Just slide in that LinkedIn DM.
But I believe it or not, that's where I'm most active. Not posting, but reading and all that kind of stuff. So I got that premium.
Got that gold status.
Hit me up.
I feel like you're the first guest I've had that's promoted their LinkedIn. Everyone's like, yo, hit me up on the gram, hit me up on Snapchat. Alex like, yo, just hit me up on LinkedIn. send that connection invite. You can connect with New Theory Radio at New Theory Radio on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook as well. We are available on iTunes, so please subscribe. And please check us out on Spotify. We're officially on Spotify now, so hit us up on there as well. And you can hit me up at Nav Nanwa on Instagram and at Nanwa on Twitter. And that's a wrap. Thank you so much for tuning into New Theory Radio, and you will hear us all next time. Peace.
Cheers.
Thank you.
At American University, we don't just hope for change, we create it. We don't just dream of a better world, we make it a reality. With a graduate degree from AU, you'll access expert faculty and connections throughout DC to develop skills and experience to turn your passion into purpose. And that purpose can make all the difference in your career. Discover the difference a degree makes at american.edu/grad school.